In the world of television comedy, timing is everything. But as Ted Danson recently revealed on his podcast Where Everybody Knows Your Name, even the most seasoned stars and finely tuned productions can sometimes miss the mark, and when that happens in front of a live studio audience, the results are both humbling and hilarious. Danson, who played the suave but often clueless bartender Sam Malone on NBC's iconic sitcom Cheers, invited fellow comedy veteran Fred Armisen onto the podcast for a deep and engaging conversation about the unpredictability of making people laugh. The two men, both of whom have spent decades performing under the bright lights of studio sets and sketch stages, swapped war stories from the trenches of television. Armisen, known for his offbeat brilliance on Saturday Night Live and Portlandia, was the perfect guest for a conversation that covered everything from comedic timing to the subtle heartbreak of a joke falling flat in real time. Danson shared a particularly memorable moment from his time on Cheers, a show renowned not just for its writing and characters but for being filmed in front of a live studio audience, a practice that added both pressure and excitement to each taping. He described a week where a certain joke had the cast and crew in stitches during rehearsals. All week long, Danson recalled, we'd rehearse this bit, and we couldn't even get through it without cracking up. We thought, this is it. This is going to bring the house down. But when the moment arrived and the audience was in place, something shocking happened. Silence. Not a chuckle, not a groan, just the cold, unmistakable quiet of a joke that didn't land. You could hear a pin drop, he said, still amused at the memory. And your body just plummets to earth. It's one of the weirdest feelings. That moment of comedic collapse led to one of the funniest behind-the-scenes moments on set. The show's legendary director and co-creator James Burrows, a man with an impeccable ear for audience energy, turned to the crowd and asked, "Can you hear it? Are the mics on?" As it turned out, the microphones had indeed been off. Once they were switched on and the joke was run again, the audience exploded in laughter. Vindication. Danson laughed retelling the moment, crediting Burrows' instinct and quick thinking. However, the real punchline came a week later when Danson himself tried to replicate Burrows' move during another underwhelming audience response. He turned to the crowd and asked, "Can you hear us?" This time, the answer came back, loud and clear, "Yes, we can." No mic failure. Just a joke that didn't work. When Jimmy called it, it was the mics, Danson joked. When I called it, it was just a bomb. That moment became a symbol for every performer's worst nightmare and an inside joke for those who've lived through it. The podcast episode wasn't just a collection of bloopers and giggles, it became a reflection on the fragile, intangible art of comedy itself. For both Danson and Armisen, the conversation drifted into the deeper territory of how much effort goes into crafting humor, and how even with perfect scripts, seasoned actors, and decades of experience, you can't always predict how an audience will respond. That's the beauty of it, Armisen added. You think something's going to kill. And then, it just doesn't. And you have to wear it. Danson spoke warmly of Cheers, a show that not only defined his career but helped define the modern sitcom. With its tight ensemble cast and sharp writing, Cheers set a gold standard for TV comedy. The show ran for 11 seasons from 1982 to 1993, winning 28 Emmy Awards and consistently ranking among the most beloved shows of its era. But behind that success were countless hours of rehearsal, experimentation, and trial and error. He gave special praise to James Burrows, the man he still refers to affectionately as Jimmy. Burrows wasn't just a director of Cheers, he was the director, helming 237 of the show's 275 episodes. His influence on the pacing, chemistry, and rhythm of the show can't be overstated. Burrows, who co-created Cheers alongside Glenn and Les Charles, brought a unique vision and hands-on approach that helped the show thrive. According to Danson, Burrows had an uncanny ability to read the room, and if something wasn't working, he didn't hesitate to change it, often just moments before taping. Danson marveled at Burrows' longevity and continued contributions to television. Now 85, Burrows remains a towering figure in the industry. Far from retired, he most recently directed and executive-produced Mid-Century Modern, a Hulu comedy series starring Nathan Lane, Matt Bomer, and the late Linda Lavin. The project, a nod to multi-camera sitcoms of the past, shows that Burrows' passion for the form is as strong as ever. He's still got it, Danson said with admiration. There's nobody like him. As the podcast unfolded, the conversation circled back to the emotional highs and lows of live performance. Danson shared more behind-the-scenes tidbits from Cheers, including the challenge of maintaining comedic energy over long shooting days and the vulnerability that comes from performing in front of a live audience. It's an experience that makes or breaks performers, and one that offers no shortcuts. You learn to read the room, Danson said. You learn to pivot. And sometimes, you just have to take the L. Fred Armisen, who came up through the world of sketch and improved, nodded in agreement. On Saturday Night Live, where cast members write and perform new material weekly, the unpredictability of audience reaction is just part of the game. There are sketches we were sure were going to hit, and then nothing, Armisen said. And then you do something weird, almost as a throwaway, and people lose their minds. The hour-long episode ultimately served as more than just a look back, it was a celebration of resilience in comedy. Both Danson and Armisen spoke about how important it is to embrace the bombs along with the big laughs. That's where the stories come from, Danson said. The laughs are great. But the ones that don't land? Those are the ones you never forget. For fans of Cheers, SNL, or just great comedy in general, the episode was a treasure trove of anecdotes, wisdom, and mutual admiration. It offered a rare, unfiltered glimpse into what it takes to craft comedy that lasts and the humility that even the greats carry with them. So the next time a joke doesn't land, remember, even Sam Malone and the cast of Cheers had their off nights. And sometimes, the only thing you can do is laugh at the silence, pick yourself up, and try again.